30 years ago, a parish church in Southern California, where I lived then, hosted an exhibit of artworks in its sanctuary. The church's Friends of Art committee had organized it. And the art was to remain in place throughout the week, including Sundays. Parishioners looked around before taking a pew. Near the main door was a piece of art depicting the violence against and suffering of children. It was quite graphic. Many people felt it was appropriate for a place like a church. Where better, they said. But voices who were disturbed by it cried the more loudly. The heat of the fight reached the newspapers. I quote from the LA Times coverage. The naysayers, they complained to the church administration, who ordered the show removed. Local artists and their parish supporters reacted with anger, threatening to organize a demonstration. After days of negotiations, the sharply divided congregation is now faced with an unusual compromise. The spectacle of art covered by white sheets during worship services. An opportunity was lost, I thought then, to have substantive exploration into the nature of the image at the front of the church. Because there, above the altar, was Christ crucified. The cross is an instrument of torture and death. There is no way to make it beautiful, though we try. Gleaming gold and silver crucifixes and crosses hang about our necks. Jeweled altar crosses inhabit many a museum. And the body hanging on the cross is given by many artists softer, willing form, and its agony is frozen often as mere discomfort. The Reformations of the 16th century took Jesus down from the cross visually and tried to sweep away the medieval penchant for depicting its violence, though many of its hymns speak to it. And newer religious traditions after the Enlightenment dress the cross with more modern thinking. I recently lived for a decade surrounded by a predominant religious tradition which glosses over the crucifixion and instead places Jesus' saving act in the Garden of Gethsemane. The symbol of the cross is absent. Here, above our altar, is Christ crucified. And we are here to remember and to mourn the torture and death of our Lord. As a teenager, I learned hymns of the Passion, sung so movingly by the congregation I was a part of in Augsburg, Germany, where we lived. O sacred head, sore wounded. O holy Jesus, how hast thou offended? In its choir, I sang Bach's Passions of St. Matthew and St. John. And there, I felt God's first firm hand on my heart, drawing me to spend my life understanding and preaching the meaning of the cross. The paintings of Hans Holbein in a church down the street transfixed me and taught me the Passion of Christ. I was formed in those formative years by art and music and by the people who nurtured me as I asked questions of faith. I grew into adulthood and into more mature years. But had I ever really seen or heard? Was all gleaming gold and bejeweled, softened and made liturgical? Oh, my Lord Jesus, have I ever embraced those suffering in this world as I have longed to embrace you? Perhaps it is right that I cannot join in singing these hymns on this pandemic Good Friday, a penance for not having learned well enough and practiced well enough their deepest meanings in my life. O Lord Jesus, I am too weak to carry your cross and have shied away from carrying the burdens of your children. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, and there they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side. Through a relative, I have chanced to meet a number of journalists who are foreign correspondents. One had been reared in Catholic schools and college. Our conversations often turned from the news to things theological. He told me once a story that crushed my heart. He was reporting from a war-torn land. Renewed fighting had taken him there. It was dangerous, and he and his interpreter and cameraman had to judge every moment. It was common to see evidence of war in bloody clothing and injured bodies and funerals of the dead. But one day, they had ventured out quickly to get food at an open market. A man walked by carrying something that caught his attention. He looked more closely, as reporters and good theologians are meant to do. He realized to his horror that the clear plastic bag the man held so easily contained the bloody corpse of a baby. He looked around. No one was looking at it. No one was remarking on it. Such a sight, unthinkable to us, was simply unremarkable in that time and place. But my friend said he could not turn his eyes. He said, I felt I had to give him my human notice and compassion. The baby deserved at least that much. This is why we gaze upon Christ crucified. This is why we gather to do so more intently on a Friday called Good each year. We are human beings. We must wrench open our hearts more and more to see the world's sufferings and death, and it is Christ's suffering that teaches us suffering. It teaches us that suffering and death cannot and do not have the final word. We are pilgrims who walk up the hill of Calvary and from its height gain a view of the whole world in need of redemption. There we embrace the feet of our Lord as he embraces us, his sinews bound, but oh, his love unbounded. And we cannot love Christ truly without seeing truly what he endured, and without seeing what our sister and brother human beings endure. Is it nothing, all you who pass by? Is there any sorrow like unto my sorrow? O Lord Jesus, why is it so easy for me not to see your people suffering? I have been baptized into your death. I eat the bread of your body and the wine of your blood to remember your death. In thy most bitter passion, my heart to share doth cry. This, I think, is original sin. Our terrible human propensity to look away, even when we bear the chrism of Christ on our brow, even when the waters of baptism have washed our eyes to see. We are human beings, members of Christ's body, but we are not yet grown into the full stature of Christ. Now, we lack no examples of inhumanity in our century, this year, this week. We are followers of Christ. And I propose that our deepest vocation is to see, and to love the world that God so loved. Elie Wiesel wrote 57 books and was a giant of a moral philosopher. In awarding him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986, the committee called him a messenger to mankind. But he was 15 years old when his adolescence was shaped by the atrocities he endured in Nazi death camps. 15 years after his liberation, in his very first book called Night, he recounts being rounded up with his family and being sent from one concentration camp to another. He recalls how a high official of the camp was arrested and tortured for having planned a seditious plot. The young boy who was his pipel, or runner assistant, was also arrested and tortured as they tried to gain information about the plot. The story I am about to read from Wiesel's work, Night, will be difficult to hear. It is important that memory not be erased. Please gaze upon our Lord crucified as you listen. The SS then condemned the boy to death, him and 2 other inmates who had been found to possess arms. One day, as we returned from work, we saw 3 gallows, 3 black ravens, erected on the Appelplatz. Roll call. The SS surrounding us, machine guns aimed at us, the usual ritual. 3 prisoners in chains, and among them the little Pipel, the sad-eyed angel. The SS seemed more preoccupied, more worried than usual. To hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was not a small matter. The head of the camp read the verdict. All eyes were on the child. He was pale, almost calm, but he was biting his lips as he stood in the shadow of the gallows. This time, the Lager Capo refused to act as executioner. 3 SS took his place. The 3 condemned prisoners together stepped onto the chairs. In unison, the nooses were placed around their necks. "Long live liberty!" shouted the 2 men. But the boy was silent. Where is merciful God? Where is he? Someone behind me was asking. At the signal, the 3 chairs were tipped over. Total silence in the camp. On the horizon, the sun was setting. "Caps off!" screamed the Lager Älteste. His voice quivered. As for the rest of us, we were weeping. "Cover your heads!" Then came the march past the victims. The 2 men were no longer alive. Their tongues were hanging out swollen and bluish. But the 3rd rope was still moving. The child, too light, was still breathing, and he remained for more than half an hour, lingering between life and death, writhing before our eyes. And we were forced to look at him at close range. He was still alive when I passed him. His tongue was still red, his eyes not yet extinguished. Behind me, I heard the same man asking, "For God's sake, where is God?" And from within me, I heard a voice answer, "Where he is, this is where. Hanging here from this gallows."